The rescue. The signal was faint, nearly lost in the static of deep space. A single distress beacon flickered among the endless stars, barely strong enough to reach beyond the dust clouds of the frontier. Most ships ignored it. In a galaxy filled with empires, wars, and endless trade routes, who would risk time and fuel for a lone signal? To many, it was just background noise. But one small vessel did not turn away. Its crew belonged to a quiet people, a race often overlooked, dismissed as fragile and timid by the larger powers. Their ship was not large, not powerful, and certainly not built for combat. Yet when their sensors caught the broken whisper of the beacon, they changed course without hesitation. Inside that failing escape pod was a human. The pod was cracked, drifting, oxygen leaking out like a slow breath into the void. Inside, a lone explorer floated, eyes closed, barely clinging to life. His suit was torn, his arm broken, and the cold of space had already started to numb his body. He did not know if help would come. He only knew the silence of the stars. The small alien vessel drew closer. The crew worked quickly, voices trembling but determined. They extended magnetic clamps, pulling the pod into their docking bay. Sparks flew as the old hatch was forced open. A rush of frozen air escaped, followed by the still body of the human. For a moment they thought he was already gone, but one of the crew pressed close, scanning the human's chest. There, a faint rhythm, a heartbeat struggling to continue. Their eyes widened. Against the fear of failure, against the thought of danger, they acted. Medical packs were brought, warmth applied, oxygen carefully given. They had little experience with human biology, but they tried everything. Hours passed in silence, broken only by beeping instruments and quiet prayers. Then the human's eyes opened. He gasped, "Kugan." Hing, pulling air into lungs that felt like stone. His vision blurred, but shapes formed before him. Strange figures, alien yet gentle. They were not soldiers. They were not predators. They were saviors. His lips trembled as he whispered a single word. "Why?" The crew did not understand his language fully, but they understood the meaning. Why save him? Why risk themselves for one? Their leader, a soft-spoken figure, simply placed a hand on the human's shoulder and gave a quiet answer in broken words. Because life is life. The journey back was long and filled with danger. Other ships detected the beacon too, pirates, scavengers, and worse. Twice they were nearly intercepted. Once they had to hide among asteroids, engines shut down, hoping to be mistaken for rock. But they never abandoned the human. They guarded him as though he were one of their own. When the small vessel finally reached human space, alarms and alerts filled the communication channels. Patrols scrambled, guns aimed, warnings shouted. The aliens slowed, broadcasting the message they had repeated for weeks. "We bring him back. He lives." The sight that followed would never be forgotten. A broken escape pod, a fragile alien ship, and a single human walking out, limping, pale, but alive. For a moment, there was silence across the fleet. Then came the roar of voices, cheers, tears, and disbelief. Against all odds, a race dismissed as weak had saved one of their own. Word spread like fire. Across colonies, stations, and planets, the story was told again and again. They had saved one of us. They risked everything for someone they did not know. Humanity, for all its divisions and quarrels, remembered this act, and they remembered well. The human who was saved could not stop repeating the same phrase. "They saved me. They saved one of us." Those words echoed in every council hall, every military chamber, e.g., very home across Earth and beyond. And slowly, a promise began to form in the hearts of billions. If they saved one of us, then for all of them, we will stand. For all of them, we will judge. The galaxy had no idea what had just been set in motion. The reckoning, the story of the rescue spread faster than any fleet could travel. In every human colony, on every station, in every settlement carved out of rock and metal, people whispered the same words. They saved one of us. It was not a tale of soldiers or great battles, not of empires clashing or weapons firing. It was the story of a fragile ship, a crew of beings overlooked by history, and their choice to save a single human life when no one else would. At first, the human councils thought of it as only a touching incident, a story that warmed hearts, but nothing more. But soon, messages flooded in from across the colonies. Families repeated it to their children. Soldiers shared it among themselves. Traders spread it along every route. In the middle of wars, greed, and politics, this story became something rare, a reminder of loyalty, sacrifice, and the worth of life. The man who had been rescued became a living symbol. He stood before the council, his voice still weak from his injuries, yet filled with fire. They found me when no one else cared. They risked their ship, their crew, their lives. They brought me home, and for that, humanity owes them a debt greater than any treaty or alliance. We cannot forget. We will not forget. The chamber was silent, but his words struck deep. Every leader knew that humans, for all their disputes, had one thing in common. When loyalty was shown, they never let it go unanswered. Humanity had always been known for holding grudges against those who betrayed them, but now the galaxy was about to see the other side of their nature. What happened when someone earned their loyalty? The council called for a vote. It was not about money, trade, or resources. It was about a vow. One rich race, small and powerless, had saved a human. In return, all of humanity would protect them. A simple line was written into law, yet it carried the weight of stars. Any hand raised against them is a hand raised against us all. The announcement shook the galaxy. Some races laughed, some sneered. To them, humans were still young, still untested, still crawling among the stars like children. They make big promises, the empires whispered, but they will break when challenged. Others, however, remembered human history. They remembered how Earth had once stood against impossible odds and still endured. They wondered what humanity would do to keep such a promise. The small alien race did not ask for this vow. When they learned of it, they were humbled, almost afraid. They had never thought their simple act would lead to such a storm. To them, saving one life was only natural, but to humanity, it was sacred. Ships were sent, not war fleets, not yet, but guardians. Human vessels began to patrol the skies around the aliens' homeworlds. Supply lines were opened, technology was shared, and defenses were built where none had existed before. The small people who once hid in the shadows of larger empires now found themselves under the shield of billions. It was not long before the challenge came. A great empire, vast and arrogant, sent envoys dripping with mockery. They laughed at humanity's promise. You would bleed for these weaklings? You would die for them? Your fleets are nothing. Your words are wind. When we take what we want, will you really stand in our way? The human reply was quiet, almost cold. A single admiral answered, "Test us." The empire did not wait long. They began to push, sending warships to probe the borders, threatening the small race that had dared to draw human loyalty. They thought it would frighten the humans into silence, force them to withdraw. They believed humanity's promise was nothing more than empty noise. But the humans remembered. They remembered the frozen pod, the broken body, the gentle hands of strangers saving one of their own. They remembered the words, "Because life is life." And so, when the Empire made its first strike, humanity moved. It was not rage. It was not vengeance. It was judgment. Fleets surged into motion, faster than the Empire expected. Worlds that had once doubted the humans watched in disbelief as entire human armadas appeared at the borders of the threatened race. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, all of them with one message burned into their banners: "You will not touch them." In council chambers across the galaxy, the meaning was clear. Humanity had spoken, and they had acted. Their vow was not a symbol, not a story. It was real, it was steel, and it was about to be tested. The small race that had once saved a single human now stood at the center of a storm far greater than they had ever imagined. But for the first time in their history, they were not afraid. For the first time, they looked to the sky and saw fleets, not of conquerors, but of protectors. Humanity had chosen them. The threat. The Empire did not believe. For all their speeches and banners, for all their promises and oaths, the humans were still, in their eyes, just a younger species that had climbed too quickly into the stars. They had no ancient thrones, no bloodline of emperors stretching back thousands of years. They had no history of ruling others. To the Empire, humanity's promise was laughable, a bold bark from a small animal. So the Empire sent its first strike. Not a full fleet, not yet, but a squadron of warships to the edge of the small aliens' territory. They destroyed satellites, burned trade posts, and left wreckage drifting like bones in the dark. Their message was cruel and clear: step aside or watch them perish. But humanity did not step aside. The first response came not from admirals, not from high command, but from the soldiers aboard a lone human patrol frigate. When the Empire ships descended on a quiet colony of the rescued race, the frigate did not flee. Outnumbered, outgunned, and facing certain destruction, the captain ordered his ship forward. His words were broadcast across every channel: "If you want them, you come through us." The battle was brutal. The human frigate was torn apart piece by piece, but it fought until the last gun was silent. Its final transmission was not of defeat, but of defiance. "They saved one of us. We stand for all of them." The message spread faster than the wreckage. Across human space, the death of the frigate became a cry of war. The Empire had made their mistake. They thought one act of terror would frighten humanity into silence. Instead, it awakened something far greater. Within days, fleets began to move. Carriers launched. Factories burned day and night, forging weapons. Worlds that had argued endlessly over politics now spoke with one voice. On Earth, the Council declared it without hesitation: "We will not wait for them to strike again. To touch them is to touch us, and our judgment will be final." The Empire, amused at first, now watched with unease. Human ships did not scatter. They did not retreat. They gathered. At the borders of the threatened race, entire human armadas assembled, their numbers growing by the hour. Dozens of fleets, hundreds of ships, each one marked with the same oath: "You will not harm them." For the small alien race, it was overwhelming. Never before had so many ships flown for their sake. They had been used to living in the shadows, praying not to be noticed, surviving by being too small to bother with. Now they saw a wall of steel and fire standing between them and death. It was more than protection. It was a miracle. The Empire could not ignore it. To back down now would be shame. To strike would mean war. And so, with arrogance burning hotter than reason, they chose war. Their fleets, vast and ancient, moved like storms across the stars. The galaxy trembled as two forces gathered: one, old and proud; the other, young but unbroken. The first great clash came at the edge of a nameless system, far from any world but close enough for every eye to see. The Empire sent hundreds of ships, confident in their superiority. The humans met them with hundreds more, engines burning bright. When the signals were exchanged, the Empire commander mocked them: "You fight for weaklings. You waste your blood for nothing." The human commander replied with words that would be remembered long after the battle: "You see weakness, we see loyalty, and loyalty is worth more than empires." The battle began. The void lit up with fire and steel. Empire cruisers poured energy across the battlefield, tearing through shields, ripping apart smaller ships. But humans did not break. Their ships moved with precision, their weapons fired in unison, and their courage did not falter. Every destroyed vessel became a rallying cry, every loss a reason to fight harder. For hours the battle raged. The Empire believed the humans would shatter, but they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to yield. When the smoke cleared, both sides had lost many ships. But the Empire had lost more. Their first assault had failed. The galaxy watched in disbelief. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had been stopped. And not by an ancient rival or another great power, by humanity, the young race that had once been dismissed as fragile. The Empire's pride burned like fire. They swore they would return with greater force, that they would crush humanity and erase the oath they had made. But humanity was no longer defending only themselves. They were defending something greater, something that bound them stronger than fear. Because when one of their own had been saved, they had made a vow, and no empire in the galaxy, no matter how vast, would make them break it. The war trial. The first clash had stunned the galaxy. For centuries the Empire had crushed its enemies with overwhelming force, ending rebellions before they could even breathe. But now, before the eyes of every race watching, the Empire had struck, and the humans had not fallen. The smoke of battle still hung in the void, yet the meaning was already clear. Humanity had chosen its trial, and it would be war. The Empire answered with fury. They mobilized fleets larger than most species could even imagine, pulling ships from distant borders, stripping their colonies of defenses, all for one purpose: destroying the humans and the small alien race they protected. To the Empire, this was not about strategy anymore. It was pride. It was reputation. If they allowed this insult to stand, every corner of their dominion would whisper of weakness. But the humans did not wait to be hunted. They struck first, not with reckless rage, but with careful planning. Convoys carrying supplies to Empire fleets began to vanish. Communication relays that once connected entire sectors went silent. Human covert teams operating in the shadows cut the Empire's reach one thread at a time. Where the Empire expected brute force, they found something far more dangerous: discipline, precision, and patience. The war became a trial not just of strength, but of endurance. The Empire's ships were powerful, their weapons unmatched, but they were slow, predictable, and bound by arrogance. Human fleets moved like fire, striking, retreating, striking again. They refused to fight on the Empire's terms. Every battle became a lesson, every loss became a strategy. Humanity was not only fighting for survival, they were fighting for judgment. The small alien race watched in awe. They had never seen humans in such unity. On every channel, they heard the same words repeated again and again: for them, for us, for the vow. Human soldiers wrote those words on their armor. Pilots painted them across the sides of their ships. Even civilians spoke them in daily life. This war was no longer about borders or power. It was about loyalty. And loyalty had given humanity a strength the Empire could not measure. Still, the cost was heavy. Human fleets burned, worlds bled. Thousands gave their lives in battles that stretched across the stars. But where most empires might have broken under such weight, the humans endured. Every death became a stone in the wall of their determination. Every sacrifice only deepened their resolve. The Empire could not understand it. They could not understand why a race would suffer so much for another species that gave them nothing in return. In the halls of their command, their leaders mocked humanity as foolish. But their admirals, the ones who fought at the front, began to fear. They had seen the human eyes, had heard their voices on the comms before battles began. There was no bargaining, no hesitation, only the promise: touch them and you face us. The trial reached its peak in a battle that lasted for 6 full days. An Empire fleet of nearly 1,000 ships descended on a border world, believing it undefended. But when they arrived, they found humanity waiting. Carriers darkened the skies, destroyers formed walls of steel, and fighters swarmed like storms of fireflies. The Empire commander laughed at first. 6 days later, his fleet was ash. That battle was not just a victory, it was a declaration. Humanity could not only fight, they could win. And when word spread, the galaxy began to shift. Races that had once mocked the humans now sent envoys to speak with them. Some offered support. Others asked for alliances. All of them were beginning to see the truth. Humanity's trial was not just for one small race, it was for all of them. The Empire tried again and again to break them, but with each failure, their grip on the galaxy weakened. Their colonies began to doubt. Their subjects whispered of rebellion. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, young, fierce, and unyielding. For the humans, this was no longer just a war. It was a trial of character, of will, of the promise they had made. They had sworn judgment, and judgment was coming. And when it arrived, the galaxy would never be the same. The judgment, the war had stretched across stars, but at last the end came. The Empire, once so proud, so sure of its dominance, now stood weakened and fractured. Their fleets, once feared as unstoppable storms, were scattered wrecks drifting in silence. Their colonies, once shouting loyalty, now whispered rebellion in the dark. And still, the humans did not relent. For humanity, this was never only about borders or conquest. This was about a promise. A vow born when a fragile ship of strangers pulled one of their own from death. A vow carved into the hearts of billions. If you touch them, you touch us all. That vow had carried them through fire, through loss, through trial after trial. And now, it was time for judgment. The Empire gathered its last strength near its core worlds, pulling ships from every corner of space. They believed humanity would break upon those defenses, as countless others had before. Their admirals told their people, "The humans are young, they are reckless, they cannot endure the storm of our full might." But humanity had already endured storms far greater. They had endured wars on their own world, disasters that nearly broke their species, struggles that forced them to claw their way into the stars with bleeding hands. This was not the first time humanity had been underestimated, and it would not be the last. When the final campaign began, the galaxy held its breath. Human fleets moved as one, crossing the void with steady precision. Their banners carried no crown, no empire's crest, only the vow. For them, for us, for the vow. To the small alien race, now standing free under humanity's shield, it was almost unreal. They had once been invisible. Now, the might of billions moved for them. The battle was fire across the heavens. Thousands of ships clashed in blinding storms of light. Empire cannons roared, tearing holes through human lines. But those holes were filled again and again, with new ships, new soldiers, new will. Every time an Empire vessel triumphed, humanity answered with fury tenfold. In the heart of the fight, the human flagship broadcast a message across every channel, one that reached even the Empire's homeworlds. "This is our judgment. You thought one life was nothing. You thought loyalty was weakness. But today you learn. Today you face us all." The words echoed not just in human ears, but in every species that listened. For the first time, many of them saw clearly what humanity was. Not the strongest, not the oldest, not the wealthiest, but the most dangerous, because once they made a promise, they carried it to the very end. By the battle's third day, the Empire's fleets cracked. Commanders surrendered, soldiers deserted. Worlds opened their gates to humanity, not out of fear, but because they could see the truth. The Empire's rule was ending. And when the last flagship of the Empire fell, torn apart in fire, silence spread across the galaxy. Humanity stood victorious, but they did not take the Empire's throne. They did not demand tribute, nor enslave their enemies. Instead, they turned to the small race that had begun it all. Humanity stood beside them, lifting them into the light for all to see. The message was clear. They saved one of us, and because of that, they are under our protection forever. Harm them, and you face us. The galaxy had never seen judgment like this. For centuries, empires had ruled with power, with fear, with endless bloodshed. But humanity ruled with memory, with loyalty repaid, with promises kept. They did not need to conquer worlds to be feared. They only needed to show what happened when someone touched even one of their own. From that day, every race in the galaxy remembered. Some looked at humanity with awe, some with respect, and many with fear. But none would ever again mistake them for weak. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not as conquerors, but as guardians, protectors of those who showed them kindness. The small alien race, once invisible, now walked among the stars with new pride. Wherever they went, they carried the story of their rescue and of humanity's answer. And the humans themselves carried a new identity, one the galaxy whispered with both admiration and dread. The race that never forgets, the race that never forgives, the race whose judgment falls on all. And so the story ended where it began, with one life saved against the silence of the void. A simple act, a fragile choice that reshaped the destiny of billions. Humanity would always remember, and the galaxy would never forget. Because they had saved one of us, and for that we judged for all of them.